Hello, today I would like to give you guys my thoughts on the Giant Revolt Advanced 2. I bought the Starry Night color. I'm 6'2" and I bought an extra large. First, starting off with the frame, I love the stiffness of the frame. I'm coming from my Kona Jake the Snake 2015, and the carbon fiber frame is much stiffer. I believe for taller riders, when the frame starts to get bigger, the engineer's ability to work with the carbon and create a stiffer frame is very valuable. On the smaller bike frames, I feel like it doesn't matter as much. So, also, me being 6'2", I bought the extra large frame. One thing to look out for is just depending on your end seam. I did put the seat all the way up to the minimum insertion line point in order to be able to get the right seat height for me. So if you're a little bit taller, I don't know if you would be able to fit on this bike. Going along with putting the seat all the way up, this bike has a D-shaped seat post, and they use a shim in the back, so that way you can put a round seat post in, a dropper seat post if you wanted to. But I was worried about that whole combination, a D-shaped seat post with a clamp that goes down in the frame, not a normal round clamp, and getting creaking. When I first started off with the bike, I did have quite a bit of creaking. I would tighten the bolt, but over time I learned that you just need to tighten the seat post clamp all the way until the bolt stops turning, and from there you don't get any creaking, which I'm very grateful for because I didn't know how that was going to be over time. On to the cockpit and the front end. The handlebar shape is a little weird. After it leaves the stem, it bends back towards you, which shortens up the reach, which can be a little awkward when you stand up and pedal in like a full sprint situation. Everything feels a little bit tight, but I believe they did that and also made the handlebar flat on the tops to allow it to flex to create more comfort over the gravel. I don't know if I really feel it, but I believe that was the idea with the design. Next, thinking about the paint on the bike. One day I was riding and I went through a construction area that I thought was dirt, but it may have been dirt with some lime or rocks and stones in it to help it harden up. And dirt got clogged up in the front fork area and rear chainstay and seat stay area, and it scratched up the paint pretty bad. I think it's mainly cosmetic, but it does look bad. That's something to kind of look out for. The paint does seem to scratch kind of easily, so something to look out for. On to the bottom bracket. When I was looking for a new bike coming from my Jake the Snake that had a press fit bottom bracket, I wanted a threaded bottom bracket. Even though this bike does come with a press fit bottom bracket as well, I haven't had any problems with it so far. The bottom bracket shell comes the whole way out to pretty much meet the cranks, and I like that design, not allowing too much free play and not having to have spacers in there. Even though this FSA crank does use spacers, I believe that reduces the chance for any creaking to occur. About the cranks, this crank set is an FSA, just like my Kona had an FSA, and I was kind of leery about that, but so far it's been okay. FSA crank uses a modular crank system with a single bolt on the inside, and that did come loose on me recently, but after buying the tool and tightening it, the creaking has gone away, and I'm very happy for that. I also had problems with the inner chainring, the small chainring creaking. The inner chainring attaches to the larger one, which is then bolted with one big nut to the crank spindle, and that inner chainring bolts were just loose, and once I tightened them, that creaking also went away. There's a little plastic cover over the cranks which looks like part of the cranks, and I thought it was part of the cranks, but that cover comes off and allows you to tighten from the inside of the crank with an Allen wrench and the outside with the traditional chainring bolt tool, and just wrenching on those, getting them as tight as I could. Now they don't creak. I had a similar problem with bolts coming loose on this bike with the stem. Um, Adjusting the stem to the correct height for me, I tightened the bolts down to 5 Newton millimeters again, really because that's the only torque setting I have on my bike torque tool. I have the little Ritchie torque tool. Anyway, so I tightened down the 5 and they would keep coming loose. So in the end, I just had to tighten them a little bit more. And since that point, they have not been coming loose. I mainly like to focus on the frame, and I believe that Giant has made a great frame, a great starting point for this bike. But now talking a little bit about the components. The wheels that come on these bikes are the PX2, and the rear hub is obviously a little bit of a budget hub. I do have problems with the paws slipping sometimes. Um, it's not even every ride, but occasionally I do get a slip from the paws in the rear, so that's just something to look out for over time. The rear hub also has a little bit of free play in it, even though I have tightened the axle the whole way. The free play is in the side to side action of the hub, and it's just something also to look out for. And that's really the only component on the bike that Giant spec'd that I kind of may upgrade over time to a really nice free hub in the rear. Another thing that I have problems with is the tires leaking air. I don't really want to blame it on the tires, but I believe it's the tires in the rim combination and the rim tape that they used. I believe it may not have been applied correctly to the rim, and the holes where the valves come through the rim tape I believe may be too big, because I do get air leaking from there, especially when you wash the bike. You can literally see the bubbles coming from the valve stem. So whenever I switch my tires, I'm just gonna retape the rims and put new holes in there, and I do believe that will fix it. The tires leak air really randomly. Sometimes you can leave them and they'll be fine, and other times you'll come back and they'll be flat. And I know this is also because over time they have started to get some cuts in there, and I can see that the stand sealant is starting to have to seal those holes, and I know those holes might be coming open and then closing and open and closing over time. Another feature I like about the frame is all the different mounting points on the fork and the top tube. I would like to get one of the bolt-on top tube bags for when me and my friends do multi-day bike packing trips. I also like that it has the fender mounts, and you can mount a traditional pannier rack to the rear with pannier bags. I don't really like the seat post mounted bags because they do flop around in my opinion, and I just like the solid mount of a traditional pannier rack system. There are also bottle cage mounts on the underside of the down tube, and I believe that would be good for storing tools, and two bottle mounts located inside the front triangle. This frame does have internal cable routing, and I've had bikes in the past that the internal cable routing may rattle when you're riding. I've had no problems with that at all so far. I know over time, whenever it comes time to switch out that rear gear cable, or maybe if something happens to the hydraulic brakes, that might be a hassle to change out, but I'm just glad there's no rattling when you ride. One of the components I really love is the GRX drivetrain, and just the shifting quality is great. Every time you want to shift, it just bangs right into gear. It's really nice. The brakes coming from cable actuated disc brakes, these are hydraulic, and I believe there's just a little bit more modulation there, and overall there is definitely more power. So the GRX drivetrain is great. And in closing, I believe most bikes are really good these days, and I believe this is one of those. And if you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. And if you wish to see more reviews, please subscribe. Thank you. Bye.